In a body swap with another me from a parallel world, I met my other self. Her hair was disheveled, her body covered in bruises, and tears streamed down her face as she desperately pleaded for me to save her. Seeing myself in such a wretched state, I immediately agreed. She and I began to swap our identities. Those who had tormented my other self like that would soon pay the price. It was an afternoon that seemed ordinary, yet the mirror before me reflected a strange face. No, to be more precise, it was still me. My features were largely the same, but her demeanor was completely opposite. She stood there, her back hunched, her body shrinking as if trying to disappear. Her black hair was messy and disheveled, her face clearly marked with bright red handprints. Her wrinkled, torn uniform revealed skin covered in countless bruises. The moment she saw me, she flinched, fear flickering in her eyes. Then, as if summoning all her courage, she spoke in a weak voice. "Who are you?" "Lily Chu," I replied calmly, my gaze fixed on her. The girl in the mirror shivered slightly, then hesitated, taking a step forward to look at me cautiously. "You're also named Lily Chu?" I narrowed my eyes, asking unconsciously, "What are your parents' names?" She slowly uttered the familiar names. I continued to ask question after question. Her answers were accurate to every word. A growing unease began to consume my mind. I reached out to touch the mirror, muttering under my breath, "What kind of twisted joke is this? Is this a hidden camera prank?" Yet, all I felt was the cold, hard glass. My apartment is on the 15th floor, right on the edge of the complex, with no other buildings nearby. This wall absolutely couldn't have enough space to hide a person, let alone allow her to move inside. The girl in the mirror seemed to realize this too. She took a deep breath, then tremblingly extended her hand towards me. The moment our fingertips touched, the cold glass suddenly became soft and warm, like human skin. I could feel her warmth, her 5 fingers gripping mine tightly. Across from me, the girl's eyes widened in utter shock, her bewildered gaze mirroring my own. Parallel world. We exclaimed almost in unison. I had been reading a novel about parallel worlds, and what was happening now felt exactly like stepping out of its pages. Before I could fully regain my composure, the girl in the mirror suddenly burst into tears, her voice choked and broken. "We're clearly the same. Why can you live so well?" "Well," I paused, unconsciously looking around my room. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the guitar neatly placed on the windowsill. The room was tidy and clean. But on the other side, the curtains were tightly drawn, darkness engulfing the entire room, cluttered with scattered items, wrinkled clothes, and trash candy wrappers strewn everywhere. One world, 2 lives. My gaze fell back on the girl before me. Her eyes were swollen, dark circles stark on her frighteningly emaciated face. Her skin was pallid, even her fingernails slightly yellowed, lacking vitality. Just by looking at our intertwined hands, the difference was painfully obvious. I could only reply, "I don't know." She stared at me silently for a long moment, then suddenly knelt down, her trembling arms clutching my legs tightly. Tears streamed down her face, her voice choked with emotion. "Please save me, can't you? I don't want to live like this anymore. Only you can help me." I involuntarily frowned. "What exactly is wrong with you?" She looked up at me, her eyes tear-filled, her voice full of despair. "No one likes me. Everyone hates me. Even my parents divorced, they abandoned me." I was so surprised my eyes widened. Parents divorced? In my world, my parents have always loved each other. Their affection hasn't wavered in over a decade. They're a couple everyone admires. How could they divorce? The girl in the mirror gave a bitter laugh, her voice laced with pain. "Yes, they divorced. Now no one cares about me anymore. I have no friends and my studies are terrible. At school, my classmates hit and curse at me freely. Everyone looks down on me. I really can't go on living like this." Her voice grew more choked, tears falling incessantly. I stood still, my heart heavy, because I had never imagined I would one day see myself in such a weak state. She cried like that until her sobs gradually subsided. Then she let go of me, wiping her tears as if she had made up her mind about something. When she looked up at me, a flicker of determination appeared in her eyes for the first time. "If even you won't help me, I'll choose to leave this world." I looked at her for a long time, then asked in a low voice, "You have the courage to die, but not the courage to live on?" She trembled, her eyes showing a painful internal struggle. "I want to live, I really want to live a dignified life, but I can't. If you tried living my life just once, you'd understand." I remained silent for a long time. Minutes passed. I slowly shook my head. "I'm sorry, that's too dangerous." The girl in the mirror seemed to have anticipated this answer. She slowly stood up, brushed off the dust from her clothes, then forced a smile. "It's okay. I was too naive to think a miracle would appear." She sighed softly, then continued, "But it's good, at least I've seen the life I've always yearned for. Now I have no regrets." I looked at her tear-streaked face and slowly said, "There are no miracles. The only one who can save you is yourself." The girl in the mirror smiled, a truly relieved smile. "I know. Well then, goodbye, other me, goodbye." I nodded, turned to leave, but just then she called out to me. "Wait!" I stopped. She hesitated slightly, bowing her head, her hands unconsciously twisting the hem of her uniform. Her lips trembled before she uttered a soft question. "Could you give me a hug? It's been so long since anyone hugged me, ever since my parents divorced." I remained silent. No matter how cold and rational I was, I couldn't refuse someone standing on the brink of despair, simply wishing for a hug. I walked closer, slowly extending my arms. The moment I embraced her, a violent pain immediately spread throughout my entire body, as if someone was brutally tearing my soul from my flesh. "What the hell is this? It hurts so much." The girl also screamed in panic, sweat beading on her forehead, her face contorted in agony. "What did you do?" I violently pulled away, pushing her out of my arms. "I don't know, I really don't know what's happening." Her voice was also full of panic. The pain felt like it was tearing my mind apart, spreading to my temples. The world before my eyes began to blur, then everything plunged into darkness. When I opened my eyes again, I was in a dark, messy room that was both familiar and strange. The mirror before me clearly reflected my face. I tried calling out to her, "Hey, are you still there?" But there was no response. I reached out to touch the mirror, but no matter how many times I tried, all I felt was the cold, hard surface. After countless futile attempts, I sank to the floor, silently staring into the mirror, letting time pass. The darkness in the room gradually engulfed me. Only when the entire space was plunged into absolute blackness did I slowly reorganize my thoughts. We had swapped. Could we go back to how things were? I didn't know. The problems she faced were now my problems. I had only one choice, to live on. After clarifying my thoughts, I began searching for her books and phone. Based on the textbooks and notebooks, she was also in 11th grade, just like me. The dates, times, and teaching progress of the teachers in this world were all identical to my world. The only difference was that she was a very poor student. And one more thing, almost all the social media messages on her phone were filled with insults and abuse. I flipped through those scathing conversations. The strange thing was, based on the contact list and notes, I recognized every name there. But in my world, even if I wasn't particularly close to these people, my impression of them was quite good. Some greeted me with a smile every day, some occasionally sought me out for a chat, and some helped me without hesitation when I was in trouble. Could it be that their personalities were completely different in each world? While I was lost in thought, a knock suddenly echoed. "Lily, remember to sleep early, okay? You have school tomorrow. Dinner is on the table, remember to eat. Mom has to work the night shift now." I opened the door to the room, smiling. "Yes, I know, Mom, be careful on your way." My mother hadn't changed too much, just looked much thinner and more worn. Her hand, which had knocked, still hung in the air, a stunned expression on her face as if she couldn't believe what she had just heard. "Ah, yes, Mom knows." She awkwardly nodded, stammering, "Well, Mom's off to work now." "Yes, Mom, have a good day at work. Goodbye, Mom." I smiled and waved. "Ah, okay," she replied repeatedly, still looking dazed, then quietly turned and left. After I finished eating, I washed the dishes and then began to observe the room in this other world. Everything was almost identical to my room, except that all items related to my father had disappeared. There wasn't even a single photo of him, no happy family portrait of the three of us like before. I walked around the room once but found nothing special. I returned to my spot, looking at the messy pile of belongings around me. I sighed softly, then rolled up my sleeves and started cleaning. From a young age, I've always been a bit obsessive about cleanliness. If I didn't clean, I probably wouldn't be able to sleep all night. I kept cleaning until 1 a.m. and accidentally found a laptop. But since it needed a password to unlock and it was already late with school tomorrow, I decided to leave it and not check it immediately. I turned off the light, lay down on the bed, my mind filled with thoughts, and drifted off to sleep. Throughout the night, I was immersed in chaotic and strange dreams that made my sleep fitful and unpleasant. Still groggy, I put on the clean uniform I had washed last night and left for school. Walking on the familiar road, looking at the school that was no different from my previous world, I suddenly wondered, could everything that happened yesterday just be a dream? "What a coincidence, Lily Chu!" A voice rang out from behind, followed by someone's arm casually slung over my shoulder. I turned and saw Mark Tran, my classmate and the class troublemaker in my world. I never liked him, but seeing his familiar attitude, I wondered if in this world we were friends. I frowned slightly, taking a step back to avoid his arm. Unexpectedly, he didn't let go, wrapping his arm around my shoulder again, grinning as he casually let his hand brush against my chest. Hey, we're classmates, why are you avoiding me like that? Slap. Without hesitation, I slapped him across the face, my voice cold. What the hell, where did your hand just go? Mark Tran froze for a second, then immediately sneered, a disgusting grin on his face. Well, haven't seen you in 2 days and you're already playing hard to get, huh? As soon as he finished speaking, his expression changed. He aggressively shoved me. What are you still pretending to be innocent for? Everyone in this school knows about you. Giving you face and you still act all high and mighty. In front of the bustling school gate, I stumbled a few steps and fell to the ground looking disheveled. Mark Tran looked at me gloatingly, then bent down and spat right next to me. Be my girlfriend for a few days, and I'll let you off. It's not like adding me will make any difference, right? If I didn't understand his true nature, a bully who only picks on the weak, I might have actually been intimidated by his arrogant face. In my world, Mark Tran always called me sister-in-law and never dared to argue with a word I said. I blinked, quickly adjusted my expression and bowed my head, feigning a pathetic look. Really? If I become your girlfriend, you'll let me off? Of course, he smirked, the corner of his mouth curving upwards. Just satisfy me, and from now on, no one will dare to touch you. I brushed the dust off my clothes, then stood up, feigning hesitation. But he straightened up too, raising an eyebrow. But what? I looked at him, smiling sweetly. But even if you let me off, I can't let you off. Mark Tran burst out laughing, pointing at me. You want to settle scores with me. Quick as lightning, I grabbed his finger and bent it back sharply. The pain made him instinctively lean forward. At that moment, I brought my knee up hard into his groin. Thud! Mark Tran crumpled, clutching the injured area, his face pale, curses hissing from his mouth. Seeing him so miserable, I hadn't hit him too hard. At least I'd left him a way out. Just then, a tall figure stood right beside me. The guy had sharp, sword-like eyebrows, a high, straight nose, neat short hair, and wore a black jacket, a cigarette tucked between his fingers behind his back. He stood watching me without a word. Mark Tran looked up, gritting his teeth through the pain, and reluctantly called out, Brother Tong. The guy glanced at him indifferently, then slowly exhaled 2 words. Embarrassing. Mark Tran's face immediately turned completely pale. He didn't dare utter another sound. I dusted off my hands, looking at the guy with interest. How was that? Good move? He froze for a moment, then the corner of his lips curled up slightly. He slowly replied, Good. I looked down at my watch, then kicked Mark Tran hard in the butt. Next time you dare to lay a hand on me, I'll really cripple you. Then I patted the guy on the shoulder, saying casually, I'm off to school. With that, I slung my backpack over my shoulder and quickly headed towards the school. It wasn't until I had gone a considerable distance that I suddenly remembered his bewildered look as I left. He probably didn't recognize me, but I was all too familiar with him. Leo Tong, my future boyfriend. He was a transfer student who came here in the 2nd semester of 10th grade. A striking face, a cold and quiet personality. My school was originally a chaotic place, and many people disliked him, wanting to pick fights, but they all ended up bruised and retreated. Eventually, he became the ruler of this school. I had once told him, if we both get into the same university, I'll officially be with you. The moves I used to deal with Mark Tran today were all taught to me by him. Back then, a female student was assaulted by a drunk man. He read the news and immediately found a taekwondo instructor to teach me. I diligently practiced for over a year and finally had a chance to show off my skills. It was just a pity that the person who taught me wasn't there to witness it. I sighed, found my classroom, and walked straight to the first row of desks. But when I got there, I found someone already sitting in my seat. It was a girl with a sweet, doll-like voice, Kathy Lee. She turned, frowning in annoyance, her sharp eyes as if I had disturbed her. What are you looking at? You dare to show your face and look for trouble with me? Her voice was sharp, mixed with clear contempt. I was silent for a few seconds, then subtly shook my head, trying to remain calm. Nothing. Then I quietly stepped back, continuing to look for an empty seat. Crazy, she snorted coldly, her voice full of sarcasm. Kathy Lee looked small and cute, but in reality she was a true school queen bee. In my previous world, I wasn't very close to her, but Kathy was the kind of person who was very natural, always acting intimately with me whenever we met, even often whining to me. However, in this world, Kathy was much more rebellious and aggressive. Not only her, but all the classmates I once knew were now looking at me with completely different eyes. The female students' gazes at me were like looking at something dirty and disgusting. Some even exaggerated to the point of pinching their noses when I walked past, as if afraid I would contaminate the air around them. As for the male students, their eyes clearly showed mockery and disdain, even carrying ominous implications. I clenched my fists, ignoring them all, and continued to look for an empty seat. But since class hadn't started yet, there were too many empty seats in the classroom. After a while of impatient searching, I decided to just sit down at Sarah Le's spot and directly asked, my voice a little hopeful, "This is my seat, right?" Sarah Le, who was reading, looked up at my words, her indifferent gaze sweeping over me. She gently pushed up her glasses, her voice somewhat unconcerned. "What else would it be?" I chuckled as if a burden had been lifted. "I knew it, you're the best." Despite her coldness, I comfortably put down my bag, starting to feel a little relieved. Sarah Le was my best friend. She always had a distant look on her face, but in reality, she was the softest-hearted person I had ever met. If what the other girl said was true, that in this world I was shunned by everyone, then I believed Sarah Le would definitely be an exception. Suddenly, she spoke, her voice slightly lowered. "You're still in the mood to laugh foolishly?" I paused, tilting my head slightly. "Huh, what's wrong?" A serious, slightly reproachful glint flashed behind her glasses. "Have you thought of a way to explain things to Kathy Lee?" I frowned. "Explain what?" Sarah Le exhaled, put her book down on the table, and looked at me helplessly. "The thing about you being entangled with her boyfriend." I frowned even tighter, a sense of unease rising in my heart. "Her boyfriend, Mark Tran? No, the blonde guy." She held her forehead, looking annoyed. "Blonde guy?" I tried to remember and finally vaguely pictured a character. A vocational school student, a troublemaker who frequently followed Mark Tran and lingered around the school gate. I didn't know when he had become Kathy Lee's boyfriend. Thinking about how Mark Tran brazenly molested me this morning, the so-called entanglement with Kathy's boyfriend probably had some backstory. I couldn't help but sigh. "Sighing is useless, Lily." Sarah Le looked at me seriously, her eyes behind her glasses seeming to pierce through my thoughts. "It's best to think of a way to explain or deal with it. Don't let things repeat like last time." I froze. Last time. Sarah Le pursed her lips as if unsure whether to continue, but finally let out a sigh. "Yeah," she said in a low voice. "Last time, some girls dragged you into the restroom and forced you to take photos." At this point, she suddenly paused, then softly said, her tone somewhat apologetic, "Sorry, I didn't mean to bring up your painful memories." I was silent for a moment, then shook my head, forcing a calm smile. "It's okay." But a text message I read on the phone yesterday suddenly came to mind. It said, "I'm still keeping your video very carefully." The sender wasn't in the contacts, so I didn't know who it was, but it seemed I should prepare myself to face everything. 10 minutes after class started, Mark Tran limped in through the back door of the classroom. Before sitting down, he didn't forget to glare at me resentfully. I didn't bother to pay attention, focusing only on the lecture. No matter what world I was in, I still had to face the university entrance exam. Perhaps noticing my unusual concentration, the teacher repeatedly called on me to answer questions. Just as I was diligently taking notes, something wet and slimy suddenly hit my neck. My whole body prickled with goosebumps. I was somewhat obsessively clean, so I hastily grabbed some tissue to wipe away the substance on my neck. But when I looked closely, it was a gnawed chicken bone, just bone and saliva. Before I could react, other things continuously rained down on me, big and small, landing on my hair and shoulder. I took a deep breath, trying to control my anger, and turned my head. As expected, I met Mark Tran's smug gaze. He was hunched over, half hidden under his desk, holding a bag of spicy chicken feet, eating and smirking at me. He mouthed silently, "You're dead." The very next second, a piece of chicken bone, covered in saliva, flew precisely towards my face and slowly slid down. The entire class erupted in muffled laughter, eyes full of amusement fixed on me. I glanced at those faces, people who had been friendly, kind, and enthusiastically helped me in the previous world. Perhaps now, these people didn't necessarily have malicious intentions towards me. They just found this amusing. They were merely bystanders, those who didn't need to bear any moral responsibility and weren't worried about being implicated. Mark Tran continued his antics. I knew his nature well. He only bullied the weak. His brazen humiliation of me in the middle of class must be because he had accomplices in the classroom. He thought I would endure it silently, but he was wrong. I didn't care if it was class time or not. Without hesitation, I sprang to my feet, gathering the stack of books on my desk. Before anyone could react, I slammed the entire pile of heavy books straight into Mark Tran's face. Wham! Immediately after, I put all my strength into my leg and delivered a powerful kick to his chest. Thud. Mark Tran stumbled and fell to the ground, a scream of pain erupting from his mouth. The class teacher's shout rang out just then. "Lily Chu, what are you doing? Both of you to the principal's office immediately for punishment." The classroom was chaotic for a few seconds, then quickly returned to order. Mark Tran and I, one after the other, silently walked out. No one spoke. The atmosphere was so thick it was suffocating. I glanced at Mark Tran, who was sullenly bowing his head. He was probably questioning his life choices right now. In reality, Mark Tran wasn't particularly tall, only about 1.75 meters and quite scrawny. I, on the other hand, was 1.68 meters tall and had over a year of taekwondo training. If today's opponent had been a large, muscular guy, I probably wouldn't have gained the upper hand so easily. As we reached the hallway corner, a slow voice spoke. "Got hit again?" I reflexively looked to my side. Leo Tong was standing there, one hand propped on the windowsill, the other holding a cigarette, lazily looking at Mark Tran. His gaze was indifferent, but deep in his eyes, a flicker of mockery was visible. I unconsciously frowned. Leo Tong's mother was in politics, and his father was in business. Since he was in middle school, his parents had divorced. Their way of caring for him was summed up in 2 words: money transfer. When I first met him, Leo Tong was the typical nonchalant student, frequently skipping classes, uninterested in anything. Teachers also chose to ignore him, not bothering to manage him. After we became close, he gradually quit smoking and began to study seriously. But in this world, Lily Chu and Leo Tong clearly had no connection whatsoever, so even in 11th grade, he still maintained his initial appearance. Brother Tong. Mark Tran immediately put on a fawning smile, intending to approach, but before he could do anything, the strict voice of the class teacher rang out from behind. "Mark Tran, where are you going? The office is this way." Mark Tran froze, immediately bowed his head, clamped his mouth shut, and dejectedly turned back to follow me towards the office. We stood silently in the office for over an hour. Finally, the class teacher returned, followed by my parents and Mark Tran's father. I guessed my mother would definitely come, but I didn't expect my father to come too. As soon as he entered, he rushed over, grabbed my hand, and checked me all over, his voice filled with worry. "What happened? Are you hurt?" As for Mark Tran, before he could even open his mouth, he received a painful slap on the back from his father. "What now? Are you bullying your classmates again? Do you even want to continue going to school?" Mark Tran hung his head, not daring to utter a word. The class teacher cleared his throat, stopping everyone. "Everyone, calm down. As far as I know, this time, Lily Chu initiated the attack. Now, both of you, who wants to speak first?" Mark Tran put on an aggrieved face, just bowing his head without saying anything. Seeing this, I took the initiative to recount the entire incident. Under everyone's watchful eyes, I was a little embarrassed to admit that both at the school gate and during class, I had hit Mark Tran. As soon as I finished speaking, my father, who had been sitting quietly until now, suddenly slammed his hand on the table and stood up. "Excellent job!" I was stunned. I had prepared myself for a scolding, but I didn't expect this reaction. Mark Tran's father also regained his composure and slapped his son on the back again, this time even harder than before. "You brat, are you that idle? Do you always have to embarrass me, huh?" Then he turned to stare at my parents, growling, "And you too, what kind of parenting is this?" Mark Tran lived in a single-parent family. His father was a construction worker, so his education level wasn't high and he didn't have any formal parenting methods. But no matter how poor he was, he struggled every day to ensure his son could go to school properly. The class teacher seized the opportunity to mediate. "Anyway, violence is not the answer. Lily Chu hitting a classmate like that is also very dangerous." My father nodded, seemingly in agreement. Right, I should enroll her in a self-defense class." The class teacher choked on his words, a helpless expression on his face. He rubbed his temples, then waved his hand. All right, both of you go back to class. I need to discuss some matters with your parents." It seemed my parents were about to be called in for educational counseling. As soon as I stepped out of the office, I saw Leo Tong waiting right outside. He gestured with his chin towards Mark Tran, his voice casual. "Come here." "Brother Tong." Mark Tran quickly pulled out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, bowing his head to curry favor. I immediately pouted, unable to help but mumble in disgust. Seriously, I can't stand this. How much effort did I put in to help Leo Tong quit smoking before? Now seeing him smoke again, I can't help but feel annoyed. What's wrong? He bit the cigarette between his lips, raised an eyebrow, looking provocative. I crossed my arms and glared back. Right outside the principal's office, can you pay a little attention to your image? Besides, you're a student, what are you smoking for? Can't you learn something better? Before Leo Tong could reply, Mark Tran jumped up like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. Don't you dare talk too much, or I'll shut your mouth. Leo Tong's voice was indifferent but carried a clear, intimidating power. He lazily glanced at Mark Tran, then calmly took the cigarette from his mouth, brutally snapped it in half, and threw it into the trash. Is this okay? I blinked, watching his decisive movements, the corner of my lips unconsciously curling up. That's acceptable, I guess. Indeed, he was still the Leo Tong I knew. I guess the tastes of both versions of him weren't too different. And just as I predicted, Mark Tran stared at me with wide eyes, then turned to look at Leo Tong, his gaze gradually revealing a dawning realization. I couldn't help but admit that this little act of mine was deliberately performed for Mark Tran. As long as he misunderstood that there was something between Leo Tong and me, he wouldn't dare to cause trouble for me in the future. After all, people like him were the hardest to guard against. I also didn't have the time to keep getting entangled with him. After getting the desired reaction, I nodded with satisfaction and turned to return to class. After the class teacher had lectured my parents, it was already lunchtime. The resolution was so simple it made me want to laugh. Mark Tran and I each wrote a letter of self-reflection, and that was it. My school was located in the suburbs, surrounded by 2 vocational schools, so order was inherently chaotic. The teachers here were accustomed to fights being a regular occurrence, so they didn't bother to deal with them too strictly. What surprised me even more was my parents' attitude. Clearly, I had just caused trouble, yet they wanted to reward me. During lunch break, they took me out for a lavish meal. The 3 of us sat in the restaurant, but the atmosphere was somewhat strange, a little awkward. Normally, my parents were talkative, but now no one spoke first. Perhaps after the divorce, an invisible wall had formed between them, making any conversation difficult. Finally, my father spoke first, breaking the silence. Lily, he put down his chopsticks, saying casually as if just announcing a trivial matter, I've enrolled you in a self-defense class. From this week, every weekend, I'll take you. I was stunned. Huh, Dad, you already enrolled me? I blinked, looking at him, feeling something was wrong. But I'm in 11th grade, and the university entrance exam is less than a year away. Shouldn't I be enrolled in a cram school? I asked in surprise. I thought he would say something like, don't worry, I'll consider it. But his actual answer left me even more speechless. Studies are secondary. This time, it was my mother who spoke. She put her bowl down, her tone so serious it almost made me choke. I looked at both of them, feeling as if they weren't my parents anymore. Compared to grades, Mom just wants you to live a happier life. This time, you dared to fight back, and Mom is actually very happy. But next time, try not to resort to violence. Mom is worried you'll get hurt. That's right, my father added. If anything happens later, don't just endure it alone. Tell Dad, and Dad will help you solve it. I blinked, looking at them, then frowned slightly. Didn't I ever tell you about school before? My father pouted, couldn't help but glance at my mother, his tone somewhat dissatisfied. Isn't it because of your mother? I told her before to let the children handle their own problems, but she insisted on going to the class teacher to complain. As a result, now the child hides everything from us. Are you happy now? My mother immediately retorted, her voice filled with annoyance. She's your daughter. How do you want her to handle it herself? Can violence solve all problems? This time, luckily, she wasn't bullied. But what if she encounters an adult later? Do you want her to fight them too? I never told her to fight. I just want her to learn how to face problems on her own. If she can't even handle school issues, what about society later? I propped my chin on my hand, sighed, and put down my chopsticks, saying indifferently, I'm done eating. You two, who weren't saying a word to each other earlier, are now arguing loudly. It's not even as good as when you were silent. My mother quickly waved her hand. It's okay, Lily, just eat. Mom and Dad won't argue anymore. I shook my head, my voice detached. I'm really full. My mother looked at me for a moment, then decided, all right, then come home with me. I'll ask for you to have the afternoon off. My father immediately objected. Time off for what? If you keep spoiling her like this, what kind of order will there be? My mother frowned firm. She just fought with a classmate. Taking an afternoon off to calm down is perfectly reasonable. Sitting between them, I felt like I had reached the pinnacle of helplessness. I always knew that my parents' educational philosophies were different, but in the previous world, that difference was harmoniously balanced. When I was lazy, my father would remind me to be diligent, or when I was tired, my mother would help me relax. I never imagined that in this world, they would become like fire and water, unable to reconcile. After a round of arguments, I still had to return to class. After school, I rushed straight home. I wanted to know what Lily Chu of this world had really gone through. More importantly, I wanted to find a way to return to my life, my stories, and the people I loved, all in that other world. Upon arriving home, the first thing I did was unlock the laptop. I had a habit of occasionally writing a diary on the computer, so I guessed she might do the same. But after half an hour of trying all my familiar passwords, none of them worked. Unable to unlock it, I set it aside. After searching around the room for a while, I still couldn't find any useful clues. I looked up at the mirror, my reflection was still my face, nothing unusual. But as my gaze swept past, I noticed a book placed alone on the bookshelf. It seemed to be the novel about parallel worlds. I picked it up and was surprised to find a sticky note tucked inside. I murmured, reading quickly, "Oh, so fast." Because I was originally very busy with extracurricular activities and didn't have much time for reading, in my world, I had only read about a third of this book. But when I turned to the page where she had placed the note, I froze. It was the section about the connection between dreams and parallel worlds, even containing a vague method to induce spatial distortion. These lines had been heavily crossed out with red pen. A thought suddenly struck me. My seeing her in the mirror wasn't a coincidence. She had deliberately arranged it. "Lily, come down for dinner." A familiar voice called out, bringing me back to reality. I put the book down. "Coming?" After eating, I returned to my room and saw a few unread messages on my phone. "You think you can escape by taking an afternoon off? You can avoid the first day, but not the full moon." This message was from Kathy Lee. There were also a few others from her group of friends. I didn't bother to open them. Below, there was a friend request from Leo Tong. The person who sent the request was actually Mark Tran. I thought for a moment, then accepted. However, throughout that entire evening, Leo Tong didn't send me a single message. I secretly chuckled, then automatically added a note for him, "Walking Stone." Scrolling through the photo album on the phone, I was surprised to discover a picture. It was a sunset on the rooftop, the silhouette of Leo Tong sitting and smoking, the evening glow tinting the entire space. The strange thing was, my phone also had an identical picture. I frowned slightly. Perhaps the Lily Chu of this world also liked Leo Tong. But if so, why couldn't they be together? I was lost in thought and unknowingly drifted off to sleep. In my dream, I was an outsider, observing myself and Leo Tong. At that moment, I was closing my eyes, my hands tightly clenched with tension. Leo Tong leaned in slightly, slowly bending down, his gaze gentle as if he was about to kiss me. Just as our lips were about to touch, he suddenly frowned and whispered, "You're not Lily Chu. Where did you take her?" I saw the girl in the dream, her eyes panicked and bewildered, her voice trembling. "Oh, I am Lily Chu." I wanted to speak, to scream that I was here, but my body was completely motionless. The panic made me struggle even more violently, to the point where sweat poured out. Then I woke up with a start, gasping for breath. It was just a dream. Even the next morning, when I woke up, I still clearly remembered every detail of the dream. Combined with the marked passages in the novel yesterday, I had a hunch that it wasn't just a dream, but possibly a real event happening in the other world. My Leo Tong must have noticed something unusual. With a heavy heart, I slung my backpack over my shoulder and walked distractedly to school. Suddenly, screech. The piercing sound of brakes tore through the air. Immediately after, a strong hand gripped my wrist, pulling me backward. I was terrified, looking at the black car that was less than half a step away. My heart constricted, cold sweat pouring out. "What the hell were you thinking so early in the morning?" A low, annoyed voice sounded in my ear. I looked up, meeting Leo Tong's sharp gaze. "Thank you." I tried to remain calm, forced myself to come up with an excuse. "I was reviewing for a test in my head." I feigned obedience. "What?" He mumbled, pouting, then walked beside me. I looked at him, instinctively retorting, "I was always a good student." Leo Tong glanced at me, his face showing disbelief, but he didn't say anything more. I looked around, then suddenly remembered something. "Wait, your house isn't in this area, so why are you here?" "Oh," he raised an eyebrow, a slight smile on his face. "You even know where my house is?" I fell silent. If I said anything more, he would definitely think I was a stalker. We walked in silence for another 5 minutes. Suddenly, Leo Tong spoke first. Yesterday, I had a very strange dream. I froze, my heart pounding, almost leaping out of my chest. I dreamed of myself. His voice was low and unhurried. He told me to tell you not to be afraid. Tonight, you might be able to return. Oh, I nodded. So, you really don't belong here? Leo Tong asked, frowning. That's right, I affirmed with a nod. Leo Tong was silent. We walked together to the school gate. Only then did he speak. So, is today the last time we'll see each other? I shrugged. If nothing unexpected happens, probably. He suddenly stopped. Actually, he also told me something else. What? I asked, surprised, turning to him. He told me not to target you. I chuckled. He's really petty, isn't he? Leo Tong lowered his gaze, his voice deep. I've already started targeting you. Targeting me is useless anyway. I'm about to leave, I laughed. He was silent for a long time, then smiled faintly. I guess so, it's okay. If another version of me can be with you, then that's a perfect ending too. You still have to see if he can get into Tsinghua University, I added. Tsinghua? Leo Tong asked, surprised, as if he hadn't heard correctly. Yeah, we once promised to get into Tsinghua together. Do you want to join? He chuckled, the corner of his lips curving upwards. All right then, see you at Tsinghua. Goodbye, hope to see you at Tsinghua. In a pretty good mood, I walked into the classroom. Kathy Lee wasn't in school today. Sarah Le looked at me with a worried expression. How did it go? What happened to Jessica Shen? It happened so fast, she definitely can't continue schooling. But how long she's punished for, we'll have to wait and see. I shrugged, smiling at her. That's good then, she said, finally speaking up. And about the video yesterday, after you got the phone, didn't you give it to me? I managed to screen record it before it was deleted. It was only a few minutes long, so probably not many people saw it. You don't need to worry. I thought for a moment, then softly asked, Sarah, if I'm still as weak as before, would you still consider me your friend? Without hesitation, she immediately replied, no. Oh, okay. Her decisive answer left me speechless. Sarah Le was a very good person, but not everyone could be her friend. The path ahead still had to be walked by myself. After school, I solemnly said goodbye to Sarah Le. She looked at me with a puzzled expression. What is it? Are you transferring schools? No, I hooked my arm around hers, smiling. It's just for one night, I'll miss you. You're being so dramatic, she said, looking disgusted, but still let me keep holding her arm. In my heart, I silently said goodbye. Goodbye, Sarah Le. That evening, I had a serious dinner with my parents, then returned to my room early. Sitting across from the mirror, I didn't know if she would appear in the mirror this time, like before, or in my dream. Of course, if she didn't appear, I would actively try the method recorded on the computer. I waited like that until late into the night, until I could barely distinguish between reality and dream. The mirror's surface suddenly rippled. The mirror shimmered like a lake, small concentric waves spreading out. Lily Chu's face slowly appeared in the mirror. She still had a somewhat timid demeanor, her voice soft. I'm sorry. I looked at her calmly. So you deliberately swapped with me? She gripped her hands tightly, bowing her head. I really didn't know that hug would cause us to swap, but it's true I had that thought. I'm sorry. I curled my lips, slowly asking, so how was it? Experiencing my life, are you satisfied? She forced a smile, her voice a little envious. I really admire you. You have friends, parents, and even Leo Tong. I shook my head. Actually, you have all of that too, but because of your weakness and endless endurance, you missed out. You know that too, don't you? Otherwise, you wouldn't have used that day as the password for your computer. She flinched, her gaze a little evasive. You read everything? She gripped her sleeve, looking flustered. I really regret not fighting back that day, but it's too late now. It's not too late. I looked straight into her eyes. Jessica Shen has been expelled. Her eyes suddenly brightened. Really? But that's only temporary. If you remain as you are now, there will be a second and third Jessica Shen. You always hope someone will help you, save you, but apart from yourself, no one can save you. Not even me. She was silent for a long time, then bowed her head and pursed her lips. There's one more thing I need to apologize to you for. I raised an eyebrow. Something about Leo Tong? She nodded. I like him a lot, so I pretended to be you to be with him. I took a deep breath, softly asking, did he find out? She bowed her head, hiding her embarrassment. I was silent for a few moments, then softly said, actually, you also have your own Leo Tong. She gave a bitter smile. I'm not worthy of him, but from now on, I'll try harder. She took a deep breath, a relieved smile on her face. Anyway, I'm sorry. These past 2 days, living your life, I was truly very happy. Before we part ways, could I get one last hug? She took a few steps forward, opening her arms. I quietly embraced her. The familiar sharp pain from my limbs gradually spread. My soul felt like it was being pulled from my body. In a daze, I heard her voice say, "Goodbye, my other self. Lily, hurry up, you're going to be late." I opened my eyes, still groggy. Before me was my familiar room. My parents sat at the dining table, waiting for me to eat breakfast. My father glanced at me, his tone slightly reproachful. "Oh, so you're finally eating breakfast today? For the past 2 days, who knows what possessed you, you had to eat breakfast in your room. Don't do that anymore. Being angry with your dad is useless." My mother immediately defended me. "What's wrong with that? Eating anywhere is the same?" My father snorted. "You spoil her too much." Fearing they would start arguing again, I quickly nodded obediently. All right, I know, I won't do it again." After breakfast, as soon as I stepped out of the apartment complex gate, I was pulled into a warm embrace. "You're back." I pushed him away. "What are you doing? You haven't even gotten into Tsinghua University yet." He chuckled, then pulled me back into a tighter hug. I blinked, then also leaned against his chest. All right, consider it a reward because you recognized the imposter on the very first day." I looked up, a mischievous smile on my face. "But how did you know she wasn't me?" We spoke almost in unison, asking the same question. Leo Tong hugged me tighter, his chin resting on my shoulder, his voice carrying a hint of triumph. "I just tested her a little. I told her I wanted to kiss her, and she actually agreed." I burst out laughing. "That was enough for you to realize." "Of course, normally you wouldn't even let me hug you, so how could you agree to kiss? Consider yourself smart." He lifted his chin, a proud expression on his face. But then, as if remembering something, his tone became more serious. "Ah, right, my other self didn't do anything to you, did he?" I shook my head. "No, he was pretty sensible." Leo Tong narrowed his eyes, muttering, "HMPH, just by looking at his eyes, I knew he had designs on you. You really know yourself, don't you?" I chuckled, then suddenly remembered something and asked curiously, "Hey, what did you say to convince her to swap back with me?" "No need to convince her. She agreed on her own from the start. She only intended to stay for 3 days, but I was worried something bad would happen to you, so I asked her how to swap and asked my other self to take care of you." He paused for a moment, then continued in a deep voice, "But he refused to swap with me." "Even if he agreed, I wouldn't have known how to swap anyway. If I had known, I would have come looking for you on the very first day." I smiled, my voice carrying a hint of pride. "It's okay, I handled everything pretty well. I even got a chance to use some of the Taekwondo moves I learned. It's just a pity you weren't there to witness it." He chuckled, tightening his embrace slightly. "It's okay. As long as you're back, I'll have countless opportunities to see them later." Walking into the familiar classroom, I put down my bag and went to find Sarala. She was reading. Seeing me approach, she looked up, her eyes cold. "So you finally decided to come find me?" I smiled sheepishly, hugging her, whining playfully. "What's wrong, babe? Was there anything strange about me these past 2 days?" She pouted, glaring at me resentfully. "Yeah, if I didn't actively look for you, you wouldn't even bother to find me. You weren't clinging to me like before either." "I even thought you'd found a new friend?" I hugged her arm, gently swaying it back and forth. "No way, you're the best, the only one. No one can replace you. No matter how many parallel worlds there are, the people I love will always be just one. Remember to live strongly, my other self."